lovely to see everybody. It's been a while, and yeah, thank you for joining us today to find out more about TidyHQ. And we actually have both Isaac Jury and David Canizo here with us today from TidyHQ, who will explain a bit more about the system. So yeah, I'll hand over to them to get the ball rolling, because we've only got an hour and there's quite a lot to get through. So yeah.
No problem. Thanks, Petra.
No
So
worries.
I'll give you a bit of a background as to how I'm here sitting in front of you. Broadly speaking, I was on several committees, including my football club, and the handover experience, or the lack thereof, along with the operational activities of my footy club, were pretty terrible, to be perfectly blunt about it. When I became president, we had $700 in the bank. It was when I asked the treasurer how we were going financially, he said, "She'll be right. You're okay." I've got it in hand. He was using all sorts of different tools and what have you. And I graduated up through the committee. I eventually became president of my club for about 5 years. And it was through all those experiences that I built out a system. I'll just mute Sharon quickly. When running my club, when I went to the league, when I went to the AFL, when I tried looking on the internet for tools to help me run my committee, so 95% of my headaches as president were actually off-field stuff. On-field was kind of being handled. That's where all the passion is. That's where all the energy seems to go, with coaches and team managers and the league as well, with Footy Web or Sports TG and player registrations and competition management side of things. What I needed help with was running the club. So that was all the off-field, running meetings, keeping a track of finances, running my social fundraising events, being better with communication and running newsletters, and having it all in one place so the committee could help each other. Because we're all volunteers, we don't get paid to sit in the same room between 9 and 5, or virtually the same room these days. So we needed a tool to make it really, really easy to get everyone on the same page. And so I saw on my committee, we'd have a good couple of years where we'd have really competent people in the committee, and then they'd get burnt out and cooked and leave, and all the information that they had in their heads would go out the door with them, and the club would effectively start again with new people. And the average tenure of a volunteer is about 2 years. And I say it's a year that you get into it, you try and figure it out, and a year that you're trying to spend getting out of it at the other end. I don't know if you've experienced any of that sort of thing. The other big challenge that I'm trying to solve with this platform is the amount of time it takes to be an administrator. So the average volunteer at a footy club, senior volunteer, committee person, spends 11 hours a week on their club. I know when I was president, I was spending many more hours than that running my club. But if I wanted to try and get more people onto my committee, I needed to make that job a hell of a lot easier. So the goal of the platform is to reduce the amount of hours and time it takes to be the treasurer or be the secretary taking minutes, being the events manager, et cetera, et cetera. So without further ado, I'll run through a bit of the platform. There is a chat function at the bottom of the platform, which I think you have access to. So if you've got any questions, please throw them on the chat, and I'll scoot back to them, or David will tell me about them as we go. So let me share the screen now. So congratulations, you've just been assigned secretary of the Bondi Club. So this is the handover that you get with Tidy. So you'd get a login to your TidyHQ account, and you get access to this platform. Down the left-hand side here, there's a whole lot of areas that we'll run through shortly, but there's different permissions for each of these areas. So you'll see, I'll just zoom in again for you. You'll see all of these areas. So not everyone needs access to the finances, for example. So you can restrict different areas here. This here's the dashboard. So it's a bit of a heads up display as to what's going on around the club. So I can see straight away that we've got meetings lined up for these days. We've got some events, we've got some invoices that have come through, we've got tasks and expenses being paid. It's really a heads up display as to what's going on around the place. I can see how many members we have, how many contacts we've got in the system, how many tasks I've got outstanding, and how much income's come through the door this month for the club, as well as how many outstanding invoices. The next section here is just a shortcut to AFL community sites. We're actually going to be upgrading this hopefully later this week, but effectively it's just a shortcut out to areas at the AFL community website, which we'll be updating shortly. Here we've got a contacts database. So for me, we had a pile of spreadsheets that we had for all sorts of things, for various past players, for various premiership sides, for sponsors, for all sorts of things. My goal was to collate all those into one area, and this is the contacts database. So broadly speaking, I knew who my players were. They were in Sports CG for one, and I got to see them every Tuesday, Thursday, and on the weekend. So players were good to know, but I needed to know who everyone else was. And the other thing that I wanted was a complete record of the club. So I was tasked with running the 30-year reunion for our football club. And when I asked, well, where's the database? Who do I talk to for that 30-year reunion? It was go talk to Raka, he'll talk to Bushy, and I think he might know Clooney, who knows all the guys. He'll pass the message on. As a footy club, we should be smarter than that in the way that we engage with people. So you can group all of these contacts in as many different ways as you want. We're also syncing across your Sports CG contacts as well. So as soon as players register in Sports CG, they'll automatically sync across into Tidy. Sports CG, otherwise known as Footy Web or Stack Sports. So I'll just keep using the word Sports CG. Hopefully everyone knows what that is. So we're syncing across all that information for you automatically, which is great, which is very powerful. So here, you can have as many custom fields as you want. So for me, I wanted to know what schools the kids were coming from so I could work out what my pathways were, you know, schmooze the right schools, phys ed teachers to try and get the kids across to our club, those sorts of things. I wanted to know occupations, because it's always handy for the footy club to know who the sparkies and the plumbers are, in amongst everything else. So here you can keep everything and anything that you possibly want. So there's all different types of custom fields. We can have date fields, we can have file upload fields, we can have general text boxes, check boxes. These are called radio buttons. So basically you can have whatever you want as additional custom fields here. So lots of football clubs, especially the junior clubs, ask for, you know, are you able to be a volunteer, for example? Are you willing to be a team manager or on the canteen or what have you? So you can collect all that sort of information. Working with children checks is another popular one, as is first aid certificates, and keeping that sort of information available with it all. One of the other really powerful things that especially football clubs like is this advanced filters that we've released in the last few months. So advanced filters means that you can filter by any of those fields that I just went through. So for example, I want to, let's filter by, what was it, first aid qualified. I don't know if there'll be any first aid qualified people, but we'll see everyone that's first aid qualified. We're going to filter by these people here. And what I can do is save this as a smart group. And I'll show you this, first aid qualified. And that means that anyone that becomes first aid qualified will automatically be dropped into this group. So if I've got a first aid course coming up, I can literally just go to this group and email them. So I'll just show you that now in a second. So again, you can have as many groups as you like. So you can group people in as many different ways as you want. So we would group by the year that they played, the year that they sponsored and things like that. Which brings us to communication. So if I want to message everyone that's first aid qualified. I can now message everyone that fits that criteria and say, hey, there's a first aid course coming up. Oops. I can schedule this email if that's something that I want to do. Yeah, let's get prepared for the season. So this you can use for newsletters. So lots of clubs. We also sync up with MailChimp as well for those clubs that are using MailChimp for their newsletter campaigns. For me, we would use MailChimp, but half of our emails to groups of people didn't actually need MailChimp. They weren't that big and heavy. It was a bit like this, where it was just a really quick, short message that we needed to get out to a group of people, whether it was the coaches or a segment of players. So here, for example, we do have merge tags. So you can put, you can personalize it. Hi, Isaac, let's get prepared for the season. You can drop in an image, which you can choose from our storage area, which I'll show you in a second. So for example, I don't know what image this is. That's got nothing to do with first aid, but let's pretend it does. So you can drop in an image here. You can add attachments, so PDFs and anything else that you like, and we can preview this email. So I can get a really quick newsletter out the door, or any sort of message out the door very quickly to a group of people, and job's done. So I know for me, with the person that I tasked with getting the newsletter out every month, it was like pulling teeth, and it would only end up going out every 5 weeks or 6 weeks sort of thing. So this way I can do much more easily. And if I've got someone that's a marketing genius, they can use MailChimp instead. So that's the communication setup. We also, very quickly, we have another area here for group messaging. So a good example is, say, the committee. So I want to ask a question about, I don't know, red footballs, the yellow footballs, something like that. Sharon v. Burley. And what this will do is that it means that anyone on the committee can reply to this message and it will bounce back to everyone else on the committee, but I only need that one email. So effectively you can have a conversation within your email system with it. So it's a bit like the old Yahoo groups or Google groups, if anyone was part of that. It can be really powerful. It can also get very spammy, so use it with care. Next, I'll get on to events. So a big one for me was my social events, which was sort of haphazard at best. We'd have an events guru come through. They do an amazing job. And then the next year we didn't. So for me, one of the big things here is that you can duplicate events. So if David comes on, he's never run an event in his life, he can quickly come to our historical events and hit duplicate. And this is effectively the template ready to go. I'll just edit this event now. So we're running a pool party out at the Rushford Wines, Yarra Valley. We put in the start date, end date. We have our description. We can have a schedule or an agenda here if we so choose. We can put in all our tickets. So we can drop in all the details with the tickets and all those sorts of things. We can drop in the finance category, which I'll run through in a second, but this is automatically doing the treasurer's job for them and automatically categorizing money into the right bucket for the finances. And you can obviously collect various attendee information as part of that event registration. And the really important thing for the club is that we're going to automatically add all the attendees to a contact group. So my football club was kind of dumb when we ran events. We'd put a poster on that club room wall or the Facebook equivalent and point to it. Whereas what we could have done is be very proactive and tapped everyone on the shoulder that came to this pool party event last year and told them to come along because we're running it again. And they had such a good time, they'll probably enjoy themselves again. If I save that, and I'll just show you what it looks like. So we'll generate this events page here. I'll just zoom out a bit. So we've got the event description. We can have all links in here going out to bits and pieces. We can have all the event description, and we can go through and we can get our tickets accordingly and check out. One thing that we can do is have member specific ticketing. So for example, I'll just zoom in again. We would sell corporate memberships or 100 Up Club memberships for our past players and things like that. So if I wanted to say that, you know, only corporate members, for example, get access to these particular event tickets, you can do that. So you're effectively tying the events. So past player events, we'd have corporate lunches and golf days and things like that. We could have a reduced price for those that have bought the $500 membership for the club in here, which can be quite powerful and drive a whole lot of your membership with it all. We're obviously recording transactions. We have tasks here as well. So this is again part of your event template. If I ask you to run the pool party, you're left scratching your head. Whereas what we can do here is we can generate tasks to, you know, empty the pool filter. We can assign that to yours truly. And we can say it's due in a couple of weeks. So we can set up these admin tasks ready to go. We obviously have a record of all the attendees that have come through the door. You can manually record attendees as well. So if someone comes to you and says, oh, I want a ticket, just send me an invoice. You need to have these details. And you can say needs invoice, for example. Actually, I won't send it to him. I'll send it to the, no, who will I send it to? Bev. And I can say Bev needs to pay a ticket for a few weeks' time. So we're automatically generating the invoice and adding them as an attendee, and we can see that she has to pay $115. All of this sort of information has been reconciled in the financial area. So we're building an integration into Xero, which will be live before the end of the year. But for me, we had all sorts of people be treasurer in our club. We had a accountant. We then had an engineer that scrapped the MyOb and just got a way too fancy spreadsheet in place. And then we had him leave and a bricklayer take his place, who was good with the bookkeeping, but he didn't want to use either of those things. We turned over 6 figures. We turned over enough to be GST registered, but we didn't have a whole lot of more heavy things like payroll and assets that deserved Xero. So the goal of our finances is to keep it super simple so anyone can be the treasurer. So I can see how much money's owing to us, who we owe, how much money we should have in the bank, how we're traveling for the year, where our money's coming from and going to. I can compare it against last financial year as well, so I can have an understanding as to what's going on. As money's coming through the door, like for events or whatever it might be, we're automatically dropping it into this transactional table and against all the budget categories as well. So we're starting to reduce the amount of time. So Isaac, for example, paid cash for that event that we just ran through, and that's automatically being recorded here. As invoices are sent out, so for example, Bev here, so as president, I would sit on this tab quite a bit and look at who's owing us. And we use that language on purpose. So who owes us, who do we owe, and what's our net position? Because I wanted to know where we were at as a club. And when we were sitting around the committee room table, we'll go through some of these and say, you know what? Faisal has been owing us $40 since 2019. Is it a bad debt, or do we chase this guy up and get our money? So we can delete the outstanding payment. What we can also do, so for example, this is the event ticket that Bev just came. She just came to us and said she can't afford to buy all of it, but she's going to give us $50 cash. We can do part payments as well. And we can send Bev a notification or a receipt of that as well. So here She just paid us $50 cash, and now she's got $65 outstanding, and we can print off that summary and share it with her if need be. Now, if I go back to invoices, expenses, Bev is now just owing us $65. So we're trying to democratize the financials and the transactions. For me, just relying on one bloke to chase everyone for money burnt them out, and it burnt the club out, because we'd be left chasing tail, trying to find people to pay money. So that can be quite powerful. We've also got a very light budget and also cash book reporting. So again, we are recording tax. So lots of clubs use us to do their BAS returns and things like that. And we can do the net cash position as well for the club. You can obviously go through previous periods, and you can also share a read-only version or snapshot of these cash flow reports as well. So this is good for the AGM or any of the committee meetings as well. So that's finances. And as I said, we're building that integration into Xero. So if your club's using Xero, we'll sync all that information up to Xero as well. So meetings might sound like the most boring thing in the world, but it's probably the most loved area of the world. Given that you're here, you've sat through your fair share of committee meetings. When I became president, I noted that committee meetings were one of the main reasons people got sick and tired and couldn't be bothered putting their hand up to be on the committee. So my commitment to my committee was no meeting would go longer than 45 minutes. You needed to be home in time for your hot dinner and to see your family, because my experience was they'd often have gone to bed and I'd have a cold meal on the table. So in order to do that, to facilitate that, you need really well-structured meetings, and you need everyone to be able to see the agenda and follow the agenda. So for us, I'll just show you really quickly. Creating a new meeting is really quite simple. We can set up a committee meeting. We put in the location, where it's going to be, Richmond Oval somewhere. Maybe it's in South Australia. Date, start time. We do have Zoom in here as well. So obviously very poignant. We've just dropped this in as part of our COVID exercise. So you've got a Zoom link for all your meetings. Description, who's running the meeting, minute taker. You can set up your agenda, open meeting. We're talking about events. We're talking about finances. We're talking about sponsors, close meeting. Sponsors is part of the finances chat, actually, so is events. So we can drop that all in here. You can write down who's talking to each of them as well. And is it for noting? Is it for action? Is it for discussion? So we can get really poignant on it. If you want to get anal, you can also drop in duration that people are allocated to talk on the topic. So they're not talking about red versus yellow footballs for 20 minutes and how in 1978 they kicked a Sharon 80 metres or whatever those things turn into. You can also add attachments here as well, which is pretty neat. When the meeting comes, I'll just show you what that looks like. So as the meeting comes up, where's one that we did before? I think we did one with Petra even. So for example, let's look at this one. This has some action on it. We run the meeting minutes. So what we do is we share the screen for one. If you're at the club, we put this up on the big screen. If you're having Zoom, we're doing it exactly like this. So we write down what's happening in the meeting. As we go through the agenda, everyone can see what's been discussed. And the big secret to it is that you can see what the secretary is writing. Struggling to keep typing at the speed people are talking. This is the major issue. If you've ever taken minutes, you know exactly what I'm talking about, that you're struggling to keep up with all the words that are being said. The advantage of this is that everyone can see what minutes are being recorded in real time. So what I found was that the conversation doesn't skip ahead of where the minute taker's going. So it means that one, the discussion slows down to a pace that's required from the secretary. And second is that it becomes very focused because you don't have someone talking about Sharon footballs in 1978 for 20 minutes. You can add attachments. You can obviously see who brought up the agenda item, any decisions that were made. So, you know, if it is for action or what have you, the decision was, you know, for Bev to type faster or something like that. We can do the task, Bev to go on a typing course. We can assign this to Bev, for example, and we can say that she needs to have booked it in by the start of next month. And we can go to the next item. We can also add attachments, of course, as well. Once we get to the end of the meeting, Isaac shuts down the meeting in style, of course, and we hit save and close. And what this is doing, the system's automatically formatting meeting minutes for you. So the secretary's job is now done. You can now share the minutes with everyone that attended the meeting and anyone else. And what the system's doing is that it's automatically generating a PDF of the meeting minutes together with all the tasks and decisions. So we've got summary of matters arising. Bev needs to type faster was that decision for point 3, and any tasks. So these are all the tasks that fell out of this meeting. So from a standards or governance point of view, we're ticking that box for you automatically for the secretary. And for me, when I was trying to recruit people, I gave this one job to this was the only job that he had to do for me all year, was take the minutes. Halfway through the year, because he found it so easy, he asked if there was anything else to do, which blew my mind because no one had ever asked me that at the football club before, because we'd made the job so easy. So that's meeting minutes. And that standard is an ASX standard with respect to meeting minutes and how they've been recorded. Next, we've got membership. So obviously you're using SportsCG or FootyWeb to register your players. I was really focused on the non-playing memberships. So that is like what I spoke about before, the past player memberships and parent memberships and what have you. Really easy to set up a membership level, how long it goes for. It starts whenever the person pays for it. It rolls for 12 months. It's going to cost $200. We're automatically dropping it into the finance category of membership. Automatically renews, so the club will automatically charge your members $200. They'll give them due notice and everything, of course, as part of that. Registration form. So this is where I was adding in, you know, what school people went to, what their occupation was, and all those sorts of things, because I wanted to capture that and build out my database for the club. Waivers, terms and conditions. There's all sorts of welcome messaging that you can personalize with those merge tags again. You can notify specific people on memberships. So we had someone that was charged with looking after the past players. He would get a notification that someone had registered for that, so he could sort of personally welcome them in. And we can automatically add them to groups. And there's also this public link here, which I'll just show you quickly, which you can then share and put on Facebook and wherever else, or link out from your website, etc., that they can go through and register with it all. There's also Facebook pixels. So some clubs, some of the bigger clubs especially, advertise their memberships and past player memberships on Facebook. So you can drop in your Facebook pixel ID here, so you can do the complete Facebook stalking and track them all the way through with that ad campaign. There's a whole bunch of reporting that you can pull up on the other side as well. Pages, we're actually in the process of giving this an update at the moment, but clubs can use us as their website. So I think a lot of clubs have come to the understanding that most of their engagement happens on Facebook. A club's website really just needs to be a portal for them to get to what they need to very quickly. No one's really usually coming to the club's website every day or every week too often. Usually it's just a shortcut to get to the fixtures or to get to the results and things like that. So we make it really easy to, let's say, drop in your history or update your history. So if I've tasked David with updating, you know, who got life membership last year, he can really quickly come in here, update the page content. If you can draft an email, you can update the website. You can format it. If you are very nerdy, you can, get really technical with it as well on the back end. And you can also adjust visibility. So some clubs have pages that are just visible to the coaches, for example, for coaching resources, which is pretty neat. And here you sort of already saw a bit of a sneak of it all. So as I said, we're in the process of updating all this sort of stuff at the moment, but you get a website that's all mobile responsive and all those sorts of things as well. So you can use your own domains and bits and pieces on there as well. And you can have as many pages as you want. Next, we have a shop. So you can sell your merchandise and bits and pieces on here as well. So you can set your sell price, images, details. We have a very light inventory management system. You can set all your variations, sizing, colors, those sorts of things. You can also have visible options here. So my club, for example, had jackets that only the league players could buy. So you can adjust the visibility for those things here as well. And there's a whole bunch of other areas. Notifying specific people for specific items. So if anyone buys that t-shirt, Isaac's going to get an email so he can fulfill that order for people, which again is pretty helpful. Finally, we've got storage. So you can drop in your document storage here. My example was constitution. So we had to drive 3 hours to find our club's constitution that was out on a farm. The other one was my logo for the club was at a screen printers. We didn't actually have it in-house. And the other example was Dropbox, which we put in place, but when I left, it sort of had to leave with me to a large degree. So what we do is you can have a communal place to drop in, fonts that the club might use or icons or anything else that might be relevant to the club here. Just finally, we've got tasks. So tasks, fairly self-explanatory in many ways. You assign a task to someone. The real difference that we pick up on is that you can assign a task to a role. So what we're doing here is building a succession plan for the club ready to go. So I would have loved it if I had 10 things that I knew I had to do when I became secretary. And football clubs are there's a cadence to them. There's pre-season, in-season and post-season. So broadly speaking, that every year in the first few months of the year, we have to get, some pre-season things done, and post-season we need the AGM set up. So these sorts of things we can assign to the president or the secretary or what have you, that can recur every month, every year. So you've got this succession plan. And again, me running my committee meetings, I'd come in here and instantly know what the entire club was getting done or was outstanding, so to make my committee meetings more effective, because often I'd shoot from the hip to get things done, and then it would rely on me to try and remember them through the course of the week, or usually inevitably I'd find out on Saturday morning that things hadn't been done. And any of those items that we generated from the events, for example, are automatically dropped in here as well. So as the meeting's done, the tasks are getting generated and they're automatically being chased and reminding people as well. So as soon as I finished that event, Bev to go on a typing course, Bev now has an email and a reminder to go on a typing course to book herself in, and she'll get another reminder when that task is due. Speaking of which, I can add as many administrators as I want. So the goal here was for me to democratize running the committee and try and get as many members of the committee onto the same page, so we could help each other out with bits and pieces. So you can have as many roles here. So when it comes to handover, let's say Faisal's resigned as president. All it's a matter of, for handover, we just take him out and drop in the new person and hit save. And now Isaac is going to get all those tasks involved with being the president. So now for example, this one, something for the president to do, he's now getting an email with a reminder to get that job done. So the succession planning is automatically done for you. There's always other things that pop up throughout the course of the year, of course, but at least having a head start to understand kind of what's involved with those roles is really, really helpful. The other advantage of these roles is that you would have seen that I can drop in all the responsibilities in here as to what the president has to do. For AGM time, all I have to do is hit print roles, and a PDF will be generated with all the different roles, all the descriptions of them. So I can hand them out. I can see which jobs are vacant, and you know, hey, Anthony, I need you to be the football manager. Well, at least here he can understand what's in front of him, so he can have an understanding as to what's going on with it all. So this is the sort of, again, governance, succession planning, handover, and automating as much of that sort of stuff as we can with running the club. Rounding it out, there's all these apps that I've spoken about, like Sports CG, like Zoom, MailChimp. All of these different areas that I've shown you are optional. Some clubs already have an amazing event system. We're not trying to be the silver bullet for everything. In fact, we're trying to integrate in with anything that you tell us that we should be along the way. So you can switch on or off any of these sorts of things. You can use your own web domains or anything else along those lines. I have smashed you all with a huge amount of information. So I'm sure there's probably a bunch of questions in there as well, which I'll run through now. And please drop them in. Looks like David's been keeping a check on them as well. So Noble Park, does the email you send come from our EFNL email address? So it depends what email address you use to sign up for the account. That probably answers that one. But I've been in discussions with the EFNL IT team to understand how those email addresses work. The real goal of our platform, so one of our problems running my club was we'd have STG login and there'd be 10 people that all had a shared password and shared that email address. So from a governance point of view, it was a disaster and we didn't really know who was logging in and all those sorts of things. So we actually try and get people to log in with their personal email addresses for good governance reasons. Looks like Petra's already answered that. I should have read it a bit further on. Sorry about that. Jeff, David's answered that one. Troy, any limit on file sizes for attachments? It is now 25 megabytes for mail attachments, which is the same as Google with it all. And if you upload it to storage, there's a link as well that you can use. I'll just show you quickly. Here, so in the storage area, you can actually, what's in here? Nothing's in there, of course. If I click on one of these, there's actually this link. So you can actually use that link to get access to this file. So you can actually use that as well. Can you import, export all context details? Absolutely. So on our website, there's actually an area called our core values. It was what I wrote down when I was president because I was very, very frustrated is one word with Sports CG that my data wasn't my data as a club. I'd battle to get my information out of it. So one of our core values is that your data is your data and how you want to use it's totally up to you. So we do our utmost to try and let you export your information out and move on to whatever else, other systems that you want to get the job done. So yes, you can import, export all your contact details as often as you want with it all. Chantel, have you had any feedback from clubs whose committee administrators aren't very tech savvy? Yes, actually the average age of our support staff's about 70. They're all ex-customers, not that I'm being ageist at all, but I think the oldest person I've seen is in their 80s. They just picked up So it's more a mindset thing, I dare say, but the system is very, very simple. So we've got plenty of committees that aren't tech savvy. Well, you can tell her this if you want, but I built this for my mum. She's not tech savvy, but she's on a bunch of committees. She's a good-hearted person. She knows how to use Facebook. That's all the skills that you should need to run the platform. So you don't need to be tech savvy to do it. And we've got plenty of examples of people that aren't tech savvy. With that said, we do offer a bunch of onboarding tutorials and webinars and things like that to help you get up to speed with things. So there is help with each of these areas to get you up to speed with it. And we'll be running more webinars, hopefully with the support of EFNL as well, as to how you can use it all. And Troy's just answered 7 or 8 EFNL clubs are currently using the system, which is great. Any other questions? Or Petra, did you want to dive in, or Troy?
Well, no, it looks like that's all the questions in the chat group. That was really informative. Thanks, Isaac, and thanks, David, as well. It has given us a lot to think about, and it would make club life a lot easier for most of us. So thanks for designing such an awesome system. Yeah, you're getting a few more questions while I'm talking. But yeah, I was just going to touch on that onboard program that you offer as well. So if there are people that aren't tech savvy that just think, oh, we've just purchased the system and you left cold, it's not the case. So TidyHQ do have that support system in place, and they help you from the beginning, which is great. So don't think you'll be left on your own.
Yeah, there's a few other resources. We've set up a Facebook group as well, which is pretty helpful, people helping out each other there as well. So if you do get stuck, there's those sorts of facilities open to you as well, which make it easier. And our support team, you might have spotted a little blue button at the bottom right there. If you click on that, you can start a conversation with our support team as well. Yeah. Pretty good and fairly responsive with everything as well. And yeah, more than happy to guide you through it. What we see typically is that, it's like most IT systems, it takes you a little bit to get on board, but once we're up and going, it runs along pretty well. So we've got groups like Yena over in Gippsland that are, the old gold quality clubs where one of the younger guys set it up, but now the lady running the website is most definitely not a tech person, but she just runs it now without having to think about it. So it's taken a huge amount of work off their plates, and they're not tech savvy. Brad just asked, can you import your accounts from another provider? I don't know if this is contacts or finances, but contacts you can import in CSVs from anywhere, whether it's MailChimp or anything else. Finances, we don't have an import tool at this stage. It's something that we've been checking out, as well as automating it with bank feeds as well. How would you approach, Chantel, how would you approach using TidyHQ with multiple subcommittees, junior, senior, masters, etc.? Would you just set up each of those subcommittees as individuals or groups? So it really depends on the structure of the club. So some clubs are very much all under the one or inside the one tent. For us, we had an overarching sports association, and then the junior club and the senior club were very much separate entities. For that, we'd have different separate Tidy accounts for those two entities because they effectively had separate governance models or separate finances, separate meetings, and all those sorts of things. So it was much easier to have a bit of a ring fence around them, so as to speak. Other clubs have it all under one roof. So yes, you're quite right in having just groups and all the administrators are in there sharing the same account. So it really depends on the structure of the club, because I've discovered every club's a little bit different with with how they run operationally, especially with junior senior combined.
Okay.
I hope that answers it.
Yeah. So yeah, just I'm talking to the clubs now. Just let us know if you are interested or if you require any further information, and then we'll take it from there. Troy, am I putting you on the spot? Did you want to say something? Anything?
Yeah. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think, well, firstly, thanks to Isaac and David for putting on the webinar for us, and for Petra for organising it. Obviously, we are using the time that we've got now to try and look at some technology options to create some efficiencies and reduce workloads. So there'll be a real focus on that over the coming months. In terms of the program, I mean, we think it's great. We think that there's plenty of options there to benefit clubs, and anything that we can do to reduce people's hours, particularly those volunteer hours, we need to follow up on. So, yeah, as Petra said, if you could express your interest back to her, and then what we want to do is, you know, we'll negotiate with Isaac and David and try and get if we get enough clubs on board. I'd like everyone on board if we could, but if we can get enough clubs on board, I think we can go to the guys and negotiate a pretty good first year deal, and you know, give everyone the opportunity to utilise the system. And then if the system stacks up, I'm sure everyone will be ready to go thereafter after the first year. So yeah, that's probably the best course of action at the moment.
Yeah, so just to answer, thanks Troy, just to answer Kelly's question. So the annual price for Tidy is $890. As Troy's just alluded to, they're negotiating, they're wheeling and dealing and squeezing us. So I'm sure they'll put a better offer in front of you. But the retail price is $890 per year for all of those things. So it's sort of one size fits all, we hope. So that's unlimited contacts, unlimited members. It's 25,000 emails a month that you get, 25 gigabytes of storage, transaction fee as well, because that's the other part of it. We charge all up 2.75% and 50 cents per transaction for each online transaction. If you're charging people out of the system, cash, bank transfers, what have you, there's no fees associated with any of those sorts of transactions. And that's about it. I think that's all the costs, Kelly. Jeff, we'll try to send a link to the clubs of the webinar for those unable to visit today or tomorrow. I'd expect so. I'll send through a link to Petra and Troy, and they'll share it around liberally, I'm sure.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you. Thanks everyone for joining us. We appreciate it, and hope you enjoy your week and stay safe and stay sane as well. All right.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks Petra. Thanks everyone for attending. If you do like the platform or see some value in it, please let Troy and Petra know, because it'll most definitely give a bit of weight behind what we're trying to do here as well. It'll be greatly appreciated. Thanks for dialing in on your Wednesday afternoon. I realise you can't be running around the park anyway, really. So, but thanks anyway for giving us some time. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon. We'll leave it there. Thanks, guys.
All right. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
See ya.